Something really big just happened down in Tennessee, and you probably didn't hear a peep about it on the nightly news. But this one project, a new metals refinery, it just might be signaling one of the biggest shifts in how the world works that we've seen in our lifetimes. So, let's dig in and figure out what's really going on.
And that, right there, that's the key. This wasn't some flashy press conference. When something this important gets done quietly, that tells you it's not for show. This is a serious, strategic move. You know, they say the biggest changes often start with a whisper, not a shout.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. A new factory on its own isn't that big of a deal. But a new factory with the Pentagon backing it, well now, that's a whole different story. Because let's be honest, when the Department of Defense gets involved in something like this, it's never just a factory. So what is this really all about?
First things first, let's just look at the simple facts of the deal. Because sometimes, if you look closely, the details themselves tell you everything you need to know about what's really happening under the surface.
So get this. We're talking about the first new zinc smelter built in the United States in over 50 years. 50 years! And it's not just processing zinc, it's also handling silver and a whole host of other critical minerals. But here's the real kicker. The Pentagon is a major stakeholder. That's not a subtle hint. That's a blinking red light telling us this is incredibly important.
You know, for decades, the playbook was simple. Send all the messy, complicated stuff, like smelting and refining metals, overseas where it was cheaper. It just made economic sense. But now national security has entered the chat, and it's clear that the old rules just don't apply anymore.
And that brings us right to the heart of why this is happening. This project isn't just about making more metal. It's about controlling who gets the metal. It's about owning what's called the choke point.
This lays it out perfectly. Everybody talks about mining, pulling rock out of the ground. It gets all the attention. But refining? That's where the real power is. It's the bottleneck. It's the one place you have to go through to turn that useless rock into the high-tech metals we need for, well, everything. Whoever controls refining controls the entire supply. So here's the concept in a nutshell. Refining is the ultimate choke point. Think of it like a single bridge over a massive river. You don't need to own all the cars and trucks. You just need to control that one bridge. And when the US government decides it needs to co-own that bridge, it means they're expecting a major traffic jam ahead. We're right in the middle of this story. And if you're finding this explainer helpful, please take a quick second to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us continue to bring you these kinds of updates, and it makes sure you won't miss what's coming next.
Now, let's zoom in on one particular metal that's part of this deal, because it plays a really fascinating and critical role in this whole new world we're talking about, and that's silver.
You see, silver has a bit of a split personality. Part of it acts just like gold. When people get nervous and the world feels uncertain, they flock to it for safety. But the other part of it acts like copper. It's a workhorse metal that we absolutely need for industrial production, especially for things like solar panels and EVs. This dual role makes it an incredible barometer for global stress.
This is probably the best way I've ever heard it put. In a crisis, gold is like a fire extinguisher. It's big, it's heavy, and it's meant to calm things down. But silver is the accelerant. It's like throwing gasoline on the fire. Because the market is smaller and it's being pulled in two different directions, when things get nervous, silver doesn't just move, it lunges.
So let's zoom out again for a moment. This refinery in Tennessee isn't happening in a bubble. It's a direct reaction to a huge trend that's reshaping our world. Global supply chains are breaking apart into different competing teams. For decades, it was all about globalization. Now, we're seeing a strategic retreat. We hear all these new words for it. Reshoring, which just means bringing factories back. Onshoring, which means getting your materials from here at home. And friendshoring, which means you'll only source from countries you consider allies. The global free-for-all is ending, and it's being replaced by competing blocks.
And the result of all this? You're going to see a two-tier market for pretty much everything, especially metals. There's going to be friendly metal that's politically safe, and you'll pay a premium for it. And then there will be contested metal, which might be cheaper, but it's risky and could be hit with sanctions at any moment. Where your metal comes from is about to become just as important as what it is.
So after all that, what's the one big lesson here? What should we really take away from this quiet little deal in Tennessee? Well, it all comes down to a single powerful word: control. Remember, an agency like the Pentagon doesn't think in terms of profit and loss. They don't care about quarterly reports. They have one job: national security. And to them, that means one thing above all else:
guaranteed control over access to critical materials, especially when things get tense.
This is a complete rewrite of the economic rules we've lived by for 40 years. The goal used to be simple: find the cheapest price, anywhere on Earth. Now the main goal is just securing access, period, even if it costs more. We've moved from the cheapest price to the access price, and that's the price you pay to make sure you're not left empty-handed.
So, let's sum it all up. Here's what to remember. First, the real global competition is moving to refining, the industrial middle ground. Second, politics and policy risk are no longer separate from the market. They are now a direct part of the price of everything. What we are really watching is the slow, deliberate rebuilding of our own industrial capacity. It's a huge shift from dependency on others to our own security.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. For a long time, we've understood that energy is a national security issue. Are we now entering a new world where critical metals are viewed in the exact same way, where a secure supply of silver is just as vital as a secure supply of oil? The answer to that question is going to define the next decade for all of us.